My name is Eric. You can call me Spinny if you want. This is my guide to being a tinkerer. First and foremost, I think it's important to set your expectations appropriately. If you're thinking you're going to be able to take random hodgepodges of parts out of parts bins or random junk you might have lying around, put them all together and expect them to work perfectly, well, you're going to be in a world of frustration and you're not going to be having a whole lot of fun. Besides, if you're looking for perfectly compatible, perfectly working pieces of equipment, well, they already exist. You just go buy them new and bolt them on. You're not really tinkering at that point, you're just putting stuff together or buying new things. I suppose if that's you, you haven't clicked on this video, but if you have, you could probably just leave now. If your expectations are more along the lines of like, hey, I'm surprised these pieces of junk parts all work together, sorta, now you're onto something. You're definitely on the right track there to being a proper tinkerer. It's just this next part that's kind of the more daunting and annoying of things you need to do as you become a tinkerer that I typically hear of when I'm doing, say, a budget build of sorts. There's no way around it. If you want to tinker with mechanical things, you need to acquire tools. And believe me, I have lived through 20 years of how frustrating it can be going into a project just to find out, oh, you don't have the tool for that. From when I was 10 years old, changing flat tires on my BMX bikes with butter knives, to the early days of the channel when I was using this spoke wrench and a random $80 trimming stand that just sort of clamped to a workbench, to these days where Park Tool actually supports the channel. Procure your required tools as the need arises, and as they all become to accumulate, you'll be able to find out which ones you use the most and which ones you want to update or upgrade from, say, a Harbor Freight, REI, MEC, or Decathlon purchase you made in your early days of your tinkering career to something that's a little more high quality that is going to do a little bit better of a job for a lot longer of a time. I don't think you'll be surprised with how many tools you'll have, but you'll be happy you have them. They're generally one-time purchases you get to use over and over again. As you build up that catalog of tools with all the different little projects that you take on, you're also going to really want to embrace all of that really dry, nerdy information that's out there. I'm talking hub spacing, drivetrain pull ratios, chain widths, rim effective diameters, all that really mind-numbing information that can change from year to year, manufacturer to manufacturer, discipline to discipline, road, gravel, mountain bikes. They're all a little different, and having a good base understanding and knowledge of those seemingly dry pieces of information can be a really, really great catalyst to a bunch of bad ideas or solutions to maybe bad ideas that you've been tinkering with. Rawstercross here set up single speed with a vertical dropout, I think, is a great example of that knowledge in action. For some of you, you're already going to know this. For some of you, this is going to be very dry. I apologize for that, but I love nerding out over this stuff. So, for the given chainstay length of Rawstercross, this gear combination of 40-15 will provide a decent chain tension if used with a half link. Now, what I have here is, and what I didn't want to change, was a narrow wide chainring and a 3/32 cog. I also had a 3/32 chain that obviously wouldn't work on a narrow wide, because when you're adding a half link to a chain, you're effectively adding another narrow portion. And because these chain rings go narrow, wide, it would foul on that extra narrow part of a chain. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So what my plan was get a 1/8 single speed width, internal width chain, use a half link for a single speed chain, and hope that it would clear over the wide portion of the chainring. And it did. It goes fine. So I didn't have to buy a different chainring. I just used a 1/8 single speed chain with a BMX half link in it. And that's just something that with that information, you could give this an educated try with, just to see if, what it is you're trying to do that really isn't supposed to work anyway can work. And it did. Now I'm actually just going to, I'm going to swap this over to an oval chainring on this single speed setup that has no way of tensioning a chain, just because this is a tinkering video. On the right, circle. On the left, oval. Okay, I think this is pretty fitting for the next point I wanted to make. Point number 4. Don't believe everything you read. A lot of what I've read about oval chain rings on single speed setups is they work perfectly and that it doesn't change tension, which honestly I had a bit of a hard time believing, so I kind of wanted to see it for myself. Loose chain. Tight chain. I don't know why, but there was one post when it comes to the subject of oval chain rings on single speeds where the guy's like so convincingly adamant that like chain tension wouldn't change. I really believed it. Now, I'm not overly convinced that the changing chain tension is going to be a problem. It's still good to, at least see it for myself. I'll still try it outside. It's just, man, he was so adamant. But not believing what you read also works both ways. Some people will be very adamant that something that maybe isn't supposed to work is going to work. I don't know why. But there's also people who will flat out deny without trying that something as silly as will a 29er, can you get a 29er rear wheel into a status, a mullet bike? They'll just shut it down and be like, well, why would you try that? The bike's designed to be mullet. If you're gonna just buy the correct bike. But I don't know, I was just curious. I just wanted to know. And yes, this 2.4 will indeed fit in the back of this. But it's a cross-country tire, but you could probably play around with a small 2.3. I know that doesn't make sense, but like a 2.25 or 2.3 29er rear wheel specialized status. You could probably make it work. And I think I'm going to try for 2025. It looks cool, doesn't it? I don't know why some people love to just say, no, you can't do stuff without trying it. I don't know if they're just worried that if you veer at all away from what a manufacturer says a bike is supposed to be, that it'll just spontaneously combust. But no, you can mess with stuff. You can try things. You can try them. And I guess that would probably be my last bit to this loose guide to tinkering. Don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid to try. Just because someone says you can't, just because someone says you can, well, you won't really know until you give it a go yourself. That's it. It's the end.